are recording this meeting, so today is May 18th, and we're here for a dialogue with the author with the Taos Institute. So thank you so much for joining us today. And just to introduce myself, I am Alex Arnold. I'm the program director at the Taos Institute. And just to say a few words about our organizations, we're a nonprofit organization. We're entirely virtual. And we promote social constructionist theory and practices across fields and disciplines like education, organization development, healthcare, and a lot more. We believe that it is in relational processes that we create meaning, that we shape the world that we want to live in. And so we offer many courses, workshops, conferences. We publish books. Many of them are available free for downloading on our website. And our website is www.taosinstitute.net. So I encourage you to visit our website. There are so many resources, including podcasts and video series and dissertations, lots of material that is available for free. And we invite you to share it with those around you. And we are a volunteer-based organization. So if you are so inclined, we would truly appreciate any donation that you're willing to make to support our work. And today we are here, I'm very pleased to introduce Maja Haslebo and Gitte Haslebo. So they're the authors of Practicing Relational Ethics in Organizations. This is a Taos Institute publication book that is now available for download as well. Thank you to the generosity of the authors. And just a quick practical note, we will end in an hour and 20 minutes. So we will end 5 minutes before the scheduled time, just for practical reasons. So you're all aware. And welcome. So we have more people coming, joining us. You haven't missed anything. I was just introducing the Taos Institute. Welcome to those who just joined us. If you would, I would ask you to please put your name in the chat and your location, where you are in the world. And also, please tell us what your occupation is, whether you're a student, a consultant, a therapist, a manager. This is very helpful for our presenters today to know, to have a little bit of context of who is in the group. And if you're able to turn your videos on, we would love to see you. So I believe that covers an introduction. So I'm going to invite Maja and Gitte. Thank you so much for being with us today, and it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Nice to meet all of you out there in the world.
Yeah, so good to see you. Yeah. Most of you have your video on. So nice to see you.
A short introduction of the two of us. We are both psychologists, and we work with organizations, organizational development and leadership from a social constructionist perspective. And some years ago, we wrote this book that you've found now in English. We wrote it in Danish, in a Danish context. We are located close to Copenhagen, and we work mainly with organizations in Denmark, around Denmark. And we were both sometimes surprised by the moral dilemmas facing employees and managers in organizations and how difficult it was for them to deal with. And in the beginning, we just had these talks with each other, both working as independent consultants, about these terrible cases, these terrible stories that people found them, or situations that people found themselves in their professional life, and they needed psychologists' assistance to just deal with everyday life in organizations. And we thought we have to do more than just trying to help in these separate situations. So we decided to write this book, and later on it was translated into English. But we wrote it to try and help organizations, organizational members cope and deal with dilemmas and conflicts on their own, because that's part of life in organizations, and we see it as almost an integral part of life in organizations, that shouldn't be seen as something like a crisis situation, but part of what happens when people come together. And we wanted to help, especially managers, also consultants, feel better equipped to deal with these moral dilemmas and ethical challenges. Skal vi lige få de her slides op? Du kan sige noget imens.
Yeah. Yes, as Maja said, we are organizational consultants, and I have been educated at the University of Copenhagen and in the States. And
Vent lige lidt. Jeg tror, jeg røget af mødet. Nej, vi er ikke på Teams. Oh, no. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm trying to open the slideshow. Can you see us and hear us, all of you?
We can see you and hear you, yes.
Okay, good. Share.
Yes, your screen is coming on now.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah?
Yes, great.
Okay, back to Gitte. Sorry, yeah, I was interrupted.
Yeah, but I'm so happy that you are able to do this, Maja.
Yeah.
About me, I founded a consultancy firm almost 30 years ago. And that was the first one in Denmark dealing with social constructionist ideas. And so I have been part of the whole development in Denmark, ideas growing and ideas spreading. And in the company, we have had also, besides what Maja talked about, besides the consultancy assignments, we have had an education for managers for many years. And we have educated managers in thinking about leadership in different ways. So it has been very interesting to be part of this development in Denmark.
Yes. And I started out working in a consultancy firm, teaching managers about social constructionist ideas. And that is now 18 years ago. And we are full-time employed with organizational development from a social constructionist perspective. And part of that is helping employees and managers feel well equipped to deal with more challenging situations within the same thinking, within the same ideas, instead of sort of leaving social constructionist thinking when things get tough and searching for help in universal theories or in their gut feeling, which is what most of them tried to do before we wrote this book. In our experience, that seemed like the main strategy, to kind of sense their way out of difficult situations. What is my gut feeling telling me? And often that it didn't go well at all. It worsened the situations that they found themselves in, which were difficult to deal with. So we decided to try and articulate what social constructionist ideas would offer in terms of thinking and practices in very challenging situations where people feel intimidated or hurt or resentful. It might be conflicts. It might be before a conflict arises, when people are just very much in doubt about how to proceed, what would be the right thing to do, what would be a good thing to do in this situation. And that is why we wrote the book, and how it has been applied in Danish organizations up until today. And it's becoming, it's already some years old, but it's becoming more popular right now. It had a slow start in Denmark, and we were thinking, why isn't everybody really interested in this book? Because we knew that they were finding it difficult to deal with these things. we still don't know why it didn't have an explosive start, but now it's becoming more popular and people are becoming more open to this kind of thinking.
And one reason for that is that finding out about epistemology can be a great relief. And we raised the questions, we discussed that, Maja and I, why is it so difficult to deal with moral dilemmas in organizations? And here are some of the ways to understand that. In most organizations, the dominant language is an individualistic language, and one that focuses on realism. And that does not invite reflections. It does not invite to curiosity. And we noticed both when we had big consultancy assignments and coaching of an individual manager, that managers often feel stuck and isolated and feel very lonely when they do not know what to do. Should I do A or B, or what should I do? And if the individualistic thinking is dominant, then it is threatening to try to consider moral dilemmas and make ethical reflections, because it raises the questions, who is to blame? Or what is wrong with me manager, because I do not know what to do in this situation. And also it is a condition in many organizations that there are no safe contexts where it is legitimate to raise ethical questions. So where can the manager turn? Often nowhere, except thinking when he is asleep or she is asleep, thinking, or try to get a person outside of the organization to talk with. So we thought ideas can be developed that would be much more helpful. So that was a starting point for the book. Yeah.
And part of the foundation of the book and of our work with organizational development and leadership development in Denmark is this paradigm shift from looking at leadership from a realism standpoint, or looking at leadership from a social constructionist standpoint. And the first one is dominant still in Denmark. The second one is becoming more popular, but is it a tie? I'm not sure we're even at a tie so far. And there's a big difference between the public sector and the private sector, where the individualistic thinking is dominant in the private sector, for sure, still. The social constructionist thinking is maybe at a tie. Maybe it's I think when they choose to learn more, it would be mainly within social constructionist thinking in the public sector in Denmark, but they just have a lot to learn still. So they are interested, but it's also the unlearning of old thinking or realism-based thinking that takes a lot of time. So what we are trying to do with the book and our consultancy work is looking at the differences so they can guide themselves in everyday situation. They need some, in our experience, they need some tools for analysis, first of all, of what is going on. Why is this situation difficult for me and everybody else? Some kind of overview, and we try and give them this through working with paradigms and paradigm shifts. So instead of continuing seeing leadership as leading of individuals, which is dominant in Denmark, and managers often really love this part of leadership as long as it works out fine for them. They often love thinking of themselves as kind of therapists or caretakers of people, support system for the employees and so on. But it leads them into strange places where the questions about what is going on with the individual, why is he or she acting like this, what are the internal drivers, what is going on in the person's private life or happened in the person's personal experience so far, and all of these ideas that they're not, from a social constructionist, supposed to be paying all this attention to, because they should be leading relations, or they should be leading work communities. They should be leading a whole, not individuals. There's a big shift in this that is also, of course, connected to how they deal with these particularly difficult situations like moral dilemmas. Så vil jeg sige ja til det.
Okay, and in order to illustrate this, we have chosen to present a case study for you. And this is actually a coaching assignment I had a few years ago. The manager was happy that he could get money to get an external consultant to guide him. And he thought his situation was terrible. He was so frightened that he would soon collapse from stress. And this is what he told in the beginning. He was so unlucky that the last 3 recruitments did not work out well. There was first a man who turned to be incompetent in the first month already, and he had to dismiss him. A woman resigned. A woman who got the same job resigned after just 2 months. And now he had a man, and almost 3 months had gone by. And the manager had to realize that this did not work out either. So for more than a year, he had worked for 2 persons. And he was in a shape that was worse and worse. He could not sleep. And the question why kept popping up during the night and also during the day. And during the day, he withdrew to his office, and there he sat and asked why. Why do they not perform? They all 3 of them had very impressive CVs, well educated with a university degree, but why did they not perform? And we have a task for you now, because we would invite you to discuss this, connected with the assumptions that Maja talked about before.
And Alex is going to help you get into breakout sessions, and the questions that we would ask you to talk about with each other in these smaller groups before we meet again. These 3 questions, and maybe you can jot them down or take a picture with your phone before leaving this group session. 3 questions. Which assumptions about leadership, like leading of individuals or leading of relations, do you think the manager draws on? Which actions could these assumptions lead to? Does it seem likely that these actions could help create better social worlds? Touching on our introduction so far. Alex, over to you.
Yes, so I put the questions in the chat, so we'll just give you a moment to either write them down, take a picture, or copy them, paste them somewhere. And you will be in groups of 3, most likely 3, 2 or 3. Those of you who are not on video, if anyone cannot participate, I don't know if you're on mute and you can't unmute, I don't know if you're able to let me know. So if any one of you ends up in a room with someone else who cannot participate, just come back to the main room, and then we will we will make you join another room. Okay, and I believe we will have 5 minutes. Is that right?
Yeah, just 5 minutes.
Okay. Okay, here we go. Eva, let me know if you need help joining a room, or maybe you can't participate, and then you're welcome to stay here. Don't know if you have a way to let us know, but I'm assuming you can't participate if I don't hear from you. Oh, there we go. Oh, well, that's great. Everyone was able to go in a room. Sometimes it's hard to tell if people are muted and they're not on video. I don't know if they're driving or they're...
No, but they all went into...
Yeah, so that's great. And let me put the timer on.
And then when they come back, we will hear something from them, and we can go back to this overview. Oh, I cannot switch the slides now for some reason. Is that...
Hello, Bonani. We have just started a little activity in breakout rooms. I'm happy to have you join a breakout room if you'd like to. I'm not sure if you're able to unmute or turn your video on. And it's just about 5 minutes, so if you want to wait here with us, you can do that. Hello.
Yes, apologies. Sorry. Good. It's evening this side.
Where are you from?
Let's do it. It's South Africa.
Oh, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Yes, so I introduce you to Maja and Gitte, and they are our authors and presenters today, and they just sent the group to have little breakout discussions. Did you want to join a group, or do you want to wait? They probably will come back in about 4 or 5 minutes.
It's okay. I'll just follow what you guys are doing. Yes. Whatever works for you. I don't mind.
Okay. So do you see the questions that are on the screen?
Yes. Which assumptions about leadership do you think managers draw on? Which action could this assumption lead to? Does it seem likely that these actions could help create better social worlds?
Yeah, and those are questions connected to a case that we just presented before. But Alex, I think I need your help with the slideshow because it does not respond when I try to go back and forth. Should I close it maybe? And
yes, I would stop sharing, and then that way when the group comes back, we see everyone in the room, and
it just says share. It doesn't say that I can stop sharing. Oh, okay. I found another way to switch slides. You see the case now, right?
Yeah.
That's the case we're working on right now with these 3 questions. But we'll just hear from the other participants when they come back what they talked about with these 3 questions. What they recognized in this case.
Do you want to stop sharing your screen as people come back and discuss it for a few minutes, or?
I think we need to look at the slides also to know what we are talking about. And return to the case and return to the 3 questions and return to the table.
Great.
The overview. So I think we'll keep sharing it.
Mm-hmm. And someone is here on the phone. I don't know if you're able to unmute, but thank you for joining us. We're in breakout rooms at the moment, and everyone will come back in about 2 minutes or so.
Yeah.
Så må du sige noget om, hvad du hørte ham udtrykke, at han tænkte ud over vejen. Ja. Er det ikke dårligt derovre? Det er til os. Det er til os. Yeah.
Vonani, what is your occupation? What do you do?
It's complicated, but I started as a nurse educator. Well, I worked in hospital quite a bit, and then nurse educator, but now I'm doing community work generally across faculties. I encourage colleagues who are discipline bound to be more aware of, community engagement issues and, ethical engagements, particularly looking at it from, the power dynamics that exist between researchers and the researched. The whole notion of being transformatory in our academic project, such that we think sensibly about what impact are we leaving behind if we just go and extract information day in and day out. Thanks.
Thank you for sharing. I close the room so people will join us back in about 20 seconds or so. Hello, Maria.
Oh, I was muted. Hello.
Hello.
I said hello.
Okay. Okay, it looks like everyone is back.
Everyone is back?
Yes.
So we can start the dialogue?
Yes.
Okay. So let's return to the questions. Can we just get some inputs from anyone who feels like sharing from your group talks? Firstly, about question 1, which assumptions about leadership do you think? This is a guessing game the manager draws on.
Can I ask a question? Can you flip back over to the case study real quick so we can just see the context again?
Sure. It was a manager in need of coaching because he felt very unlucky with his recruitment.
Okay.
And he was thinking, what's wrong? Why does this keep happening to me, that they don't work out? Yeah? So anybody feel like sharing something from your talks about question 1?
Well, I think I'm not sure. I think in our talking about it, you could look up the chain to see what, to do analysis or between the manager and the employees, right? But in either way, the manager is feeling isolated. And so the assumption that we came up with is that they maybe feel like they need by themselves to know all the answers.
Sure. Yeah.
As opposed to collaboration with either their superior or in terms of defining the job better maybe, or the skills needed, or even
Sure.
horizontally to come up with ideas for and collaboration around the position or the skills needed for employees.
Exactly. All of those things are relevant. And this is something, some of what we said in our introduction, that managers often feel alone, and they feel like they have to be able to answer everything on their own, either just thinking really hard about it or getting in touch with their gut feeling or getting a coach. They don't feel safe talking with their superiors or their colleagues, and discussing these difficult situations from a learning point of view, because they feel like they should just know. So definitely those are some of the assumptions that the leader should be able to, the manager should be able to answer these questions on his own.
And it's also a very strong belief that when a manager raises the why question, like this one, why do they not perform? That he cannot act in a clever way before he has the answers to that. So he is thinking and thinking and thinking alone. And you mentioned the word collaboration, and that is something that's really missing here, because if you don't have answers to the why question, you could easily ask, but you don't do that within the individualistic thinking. That is something you would consider if you move to the understanding of leading as leading of relations.
Yeah, switching from why to how, and switching from understanding what came before to developing what should come now, what we should create now, what we want to create now, moving forward. Thank you. And anybody else who would like to share from the group talks? Maybe we can move to question 2 or 3. Which actions seem possible or not possible from the assumptions that you found in the case? There's a hand.
Yeah, in our group, in addition to what you've said, which I think what the model I referred to was as heroic, he's got this heroic model of leadership. And it's interesting to speculate what might have happened if it had gone well. If his recruitment had gone well,
yeah,
he would, I imagine that he would be taking credit for his skill in spotting the right person to do this job.
Yeah.
Right. And yet it's not a symmetrical situation where it doesn't go well. Okay, he's asking why, but he doesn't seem to be thinking about his own part in creating the situation that we have before us, whether it's a positive situation or not. That was an additional angle to what you've already said.
Yeah, and that is very dominant also in the organizations we work with, that this discourse about the manager being either the hero or the bad guy, determining what happens. When things go well, they are the hero, and of course they enjoy that. But when things don't go well, they feel like they are to blame, and then it's really hard to ask for advice or reflections with your colleagues in these situations. Yeah, and that's why we are also working with the term or the concept of followership in the organizational work that we do. Leadership and followership, looking at the dynamics between the two and how followership might be even more important than leadership in organizations, based on merely or even something as simple as the fact that there are more employees than there are managers in organizations. So let's also professionalize and learn about leadership. That's another workshop, but that is also part of what we do with organizational development in Denmark to try and offer different discourses than the one saying that it's all up to the manager, and if organizations succeed, it's due to the management, and if they fail, it's also due to the management. Sure, yes, exactly. Anybody else who would like to share some thoughts, perspectives?
On 2 and 3 questions.
Warren, I think you had your hand up. Yeah.
Well, it's about the assumptions about coaching, that this is a problem of the managers and that only coaching the manager will help, when in fact it's a systemic problem, and maybe team coaching might be involved with other managers or with the hierarchy, a different approach than simply focusing on the manager.
Definitely. And in Denmark, there's a really strong tradition in bigger companies for HR being a driving force, and a lot of managers or leaders, they feel like it's not very much up to them, not as much as they would like, because human resources dominate the possible actions of the managers and leaders. But in this case, there was not an HR department, was there?
No, and there was not a group. I agree totally with you as to your thinking about this. Why individual coaching of the manager?
Yeah.
But if he had been in a group with 3 employees, then it would be
3 colleagues.
Or 3 colleagues, yeah, it would have been obvious. But he was in danger, was his understanding.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that speaks to what can you do in a crisis versus what can you do when where change is possible. So there's a different approach. If it's in crisis, it's a different approach. It's almost like counseling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In a way, but then we are both psychologists, and we would never do anything that resembles counseling in our understanding as psychologists. Mm-hmm. We teach. We mainly teach, and we talk about these different sets of assumptions that he can draw on, and that they would lead to different possible actions, and of course different outcomes. And that is what is the English term also psychoeducation?
Yep.
Yeah, something resembling that, so that they will be better equipped next time something challenging happens, which it obviously will.
In this case, I tried in many ways to invite him to move from the individualistic thinking to the relational thinking. And because there was really just one action possible for him, and that was dismissing. And question 3 was, is there some likelihood that the action would create a better social world? And here you must say no. The manager was overstressed, and he would continue that also maybe if he tried to hire number 4. 3 young, well-educated people were dismissed in their first job. That creates unhappiness. Colleagues who have tried to build relationships with them miss them, and so on. So not much good could happen here. Some of my questions led to the same thinking. Why did I not discover their incompetence? That has made me think, what are similarities between the 3 young people? And I said, okay, what did you find out? I found out something very important. They are all 3 below 30 years old, and they are all 3 single. How can you use that thinking? I can use it in the way that next time I will hire a person about 30 years old and being married, because and here we have the thinking of private life is really the problem. When employees have a very unhappy love life, they cannot perform. And then he looked at the ceiling and said, and I'm not supposed to help them with that, am I?
Actually, there are some leadership consultants in Denmark at the moment trying to teach leaders and managers to take an interest in the employees' personal life, including sex life, and try and support their well-being in those areas also, because there's this dominant idea about the whole human being, and that we have to thrive in every area, every aspect of our lives to be able to perform in the workplace. And obviously we draw on different ideas, and we try and keep some boundaries, maybe emphasize some boundaries for the professional relationship. Relational thinking or a focus on relations is big in Denmark, but not often connected with epistemology. Everybody agrees that relationships are very important and relational thinking is very important, but they don't necessarily connect it with social constructionist ideas. And then it might as well be a personal kind of relationship or a private kind of relationships. As long as people feel like they are connected to each other in any kind of way, then it's thought of as a good thing in many Danish organizations. And in our experience, and I'm guessing most of you would agree, it's very, very difficult, because the core task is what connects people, not their mutual feelings of whatever they share with each other. So yeah, moving on, and thank you for your great input. And yeah, let's look at the next slide.
Maja just said, Lisa,
before you move on, I do have a question and
Sure.
an observation. Like, from where I sit, I mean, given the case study, we could make a number of assumptions. So the question I would ask is, from the manager's perspective, was there anything that could have been done before they got to the point of resignation? Before he dismissed them? Why, like, after 1 month or 3 months, what about the notion of ongoing conversations as they were onboarded into the position, so that the red flags could have gone up quite earlier, and having had the opportunity then to make an intervention before it got to the point of resignation? If the resumes were so positive, what is it then? So that rather than a manager now becoming overstressed, he could have been a manager wearing a coaching hat to these individuals.
Sure.
And moving to a more relational thinking opens up for a lot of possible actions. The very simple question, what do you expect from your working life? And how can we cooperate, manager and employee? He did not ask any relational questions, but that would open up. The employees did not get a chance to say anything about the job and what is important and what is meaningful for the employee. So it seemed that there were not all these hundreds of steps that could be taken from the beginning into the dismissal.
So maybe he wouldn't say it himself, but from our point of view, he was inspired by the left column, leading of individuals, and focused on the question, why does the employee not perform or act this way? And he was hoping that if he became better at selecting the right people, he would avoid these problems in the future. So the coaching actually was focused on helping him also think according to the right side, the right column of this table. How do we proceed from whatever situation he finds himself in. How do we proceed from here? Because that was new. That was new for him. He was inspired by individualistic thinking.
Yeah. And these two sets of assumptions can be combined with different ways of understanding organizations. And here we have some key ideas if you take a social constructionist perspective on organizations. Organizations are a very specific type of community. It's not like a family. And all the ideas and moral obligations we have as family members, some of them are not useful in the organization. And what makes it very different is that in a community, in a work community, there's a core task. There is something that we need to achieve together. We need to collaborate in order to do something that is important for the core task. And also membership is voluntarily chosen. You don't have to be in an organization, and that is sometimes something that should be considered. Am I the right place? And if I don't feel as a useful member, maybe I should find somewhere else to go. So the membership is an organizing principle as to creating the formal and moral entitlements and obligations. So everything is not up in the open air. There are some organizing principles guiding when you are in a work organization.
And that brings us to the connections between what we talked about in this case, the managers thinking about what's going on in their personal life or in their personality. Why am I finding the people of people with the wrong kind of personality for the job? Or did they lie on their resume? Are they not as well educated as they told me that they were? Is something wrong in either one of these two circles? And the circles with personality and educational background, those are the dominant circles in organizational thinking in Denmark. Coming back to the idea that you are leading individuals that come as a package and you have to find the right fit for the team or the company. And what we're working with as organizational psychologists is this concept of organizational membership. That is where the main focus has to be, which is illustrated by the size of these different circles. The organizational membership is the connection between the individual and the organization, and that is self-chosen. And that's always good to remember and to come back to in difficult situations, that people have actively chosen to be part of this company. They are not forced against their will. Sometimes when organizations ask psychologists for their help, it's because they feel like there's so much resentment between employees and the management or the workplace or the organization. There's so much bad will, and it's really good to return to the starting point of the professional relationships, which is often or always that people apply for a job and they're offered the job and they accept the offer and they have not resigned yet. This means they want to be part of the company, the work community. And this brings us all together. And there will be a lot of differences in personality and in educational background. There will be so many differences, but they can all work together as supplements to each other, as long as we focus on the thing that connects us, which is our commitment to the core task. So that is why we see leadership and followership and working with relational ethics as concepts within the circle of organizational membership. It does not have to do with personality changes or personality development. And it's not something that only people with certain educational backgrounds can understand or work with. It's part of life in organizations, and it's part of what we have to be able to deal with in organizations, all members of organizations. And a member is somebody on the payroll. Var det rigtigt sagt?
Yeah.
And the little purple shade is the work community, which means that there will be parts of the trade that are not helpful to the collaboration around the core task. And there will be parts of individuals' personality that are not helpful to collaboration. They are fine, those aspects, but they should not be included in the work community. And we have to be able to, as a professional work community, talk about where are the boundaries between what we are supposed to include and what is better for the collaboration on the core task that we exclude. Like in a lot of organizations, they have values like tolerance and acceptance, and they feel obligated to tolerate or accept behavior that is conflict creating because it's part of this person's personality. And we try to teach them another way of thinking. Jeg prøver at hoppe frem.
Jeg skal tage den med cirklen der.
Okay, ja, skal jeg hoppe frem til den?
Ja.
Ja.
Yeah. We raised the question before that the manager raised a lot of why questions. And where does why belong? It belongs in the past. And when you want to find a good way forward, then it's not enough to deal with the past. And you will get stuck with the lack of answers to all the hundreds of why questions you can ask. So as a consultant or a coach, you can be tempted to say, forget all the why questions. That's very provocative when you are in a mess, because the need to get the answer seems so strong. But how you move in time as to your thoughts are very important, because if you drop the why questions, then you can be interested in the what questions in the present. What is happening now? Here we have an employee who is not performing very well as to the perspective of the manager. But what is happening to this employee from the employee's perspective? And what is happening in the relationship between this employee and the colleagues and so on? So you can move from the present to the future, but you can also take the big step and say, what is a desirable future? How do we move into it, and how do we create it? What would be a desirable future with a new employee in this department? In order to find out about that, you have to talk with each other. And that was what was missing in this case, in the beginning at least. So questions belong to also a time perspective, and some of the questions are helpful and some are not very helpful.
Skal vi gå tilbage til den her med leadership og relational? Yeah, and the background that you see connecting the present and the future is where our focus is when we work with organizational development and relational ethics, connecting the present to the future instead of connecting the present to the past. because when organizations are work communities, they are together to create. They are together in order to shape something, develop something. They are not together to understand. People really want to understand, and people feel the need to know why. But organizations are supposed to be creating better outcomes, better results, better futures. And the way they have been thinking and talking and working comes from personal life, and organizations need another kind of thinking that is more applicable or more useful to the organizational life and purpose of the organization. So we teach them to move from connecting present to the past, move to connecting the present to the future, and looking at the desirable shared future. And when it's a work community, of course, part of the desirable shared future is success with whatever the core task is. Success in achieving the core task. And then you might also talk about the effect that that will have on us as professional contributors. We will experience work satisfaction and pride in our work community and so on as an effect of co-creating these results together. And that is a big challenge and a big paradigm shift for a lot of managers, because they are used to thinking that the good work environment comes before creating the good results, that the employees have to thrive before they can perform. And we connect it in a different way. When the work community succeeds in creating and handling and dealing with the core task, creating the main results, then one effect will be professional pride and pride in the work community. Mm-hmm. Okay, så skal vi lige have den der væk.
So when you move from the why question to the how, and you are very attentive to the thinking that here we are, whoever we are, and our task now is to proceed to create a better future. So the how is important. And there are no right or wrong answers to the why, to the how. We have to talk with each other about how do we think we can move, and how can we contribute to a better future. And that is a big step to put ethical reflections center stage. How do we create a better future? Then every action is also an ethical one, is also helping or not helping in the views of many persons. So that is really a very important turning point. So to see the last sentence here, to see leadership as an opportunity and obligation to deal with moral dilemmas as bifurcation points, and raising the question, what can we do now that will help us create better worlds? That is a key question.
So instead of becoming frustrated when they encounter moral dilemmas, they can actually choose to see these situations as learning opportunities and create curiosity between everybody about the questions. How do we proceed from here? How do we take this opportunity to learn something really important for us as a work community? So that also entails moving from the individualistic thinking, is it me or the other person, to the relational thinking, it is us. what's the citatet der med, at den mindste enhed, det er interessant. Sorry, just
the smallest unit in an organization is not the individual; it is the relationship. That's the smallest unit.
That's the smallest unit that it makes sense to work with when you're working with an organization, not an individual, but relations. Okay, and this brings us to our work with what we call the ethical flower. It seems a little hippie-ish, but we drew this model when we were working on the book, going from 5 main concepts in social constructionist thinking to moral obligations in relational ethics. And the flower, the model as a whole, can be seen as a leadership tool. Each petal can be seen as a tool to deal with difficult situations and moral dilemmas. And this is, again, teaching, because first there's something to learn about the core concepts, the 5 concepts of power in a social constructionist understanding. There's formal power and there's moral power. Power seen as influence or power to co-create reality. Context, you all know about this concept. Context is a key in making, in creating opportunities for everybody to contribute in competent ways. Relationships, of course, discourse, understanding of discourses in organizations, that they draw on discourse in society, and they can actually pick and choose to a higher degree than they usually think they can, what discourses to accept as part of their organizational life and what discourses not to accept. Appreciation, of course, and appreciative inquiry. And looking at these 5 concepts, we formulated moral obligations according to each main idea in relational thinking, social constructionist thinking. And we're talking about leadership and management in organizations, and that is because working as individual consultants, our main collaborator is usually the manager or the leader, and we connect to that position in the organization, and we try to, from that position, make the whole community organization work better. So let's start out with that petal, power, the management power, the power position, the formal and the moral power that entails. How can the power position be used in ethical ways as a tool to help create better social worlds? So obviously not misusing the power position, but using it to co-create better social worlds. Så siger du noget mere om den?
Yeah, here are some key ideas. Actually, it is, for a manager, it is a big issue that whatever the manager says has a lot of influence on the way employees experience what is going on. It's not just free and open-ended possibilities to understand. So the first one is about realizing that we collaborate all the time on how to understand reality, and it is important to do that in a way so that employees are talked to as morally respected
responsible agents.
Responsible agents, yeah. And we try to position others as contributors to the work community. So whatever idea they come with can be met with a question: how will that help us in this situation? How will that help us to work with the core
Task.
the core task, yeah. So that's some of the thinking in these three sentences that that are important. And we would like you now to work with this pedal where power is a concept from social constructionism and try to talk with each other about how can this be used in a specific situation from your own work life. So you have probably experienced a lot or more dilemmas. Pick one where you have been a part and talk with, what do we do now, Alex? One other person. Talk with one other person about how a manager involved or close to the situation you are talking about could find inspiration from this moral obligation.
Yes, and this will be brief as well. Let's meet again in 5 minutes.
Okay, so there will be one group of 3 and 2 groups of 2 because we're 7 total, and we'll have about 5 minutes. And I put the question in the chat again, or the 3 bullets. So take a picture or take a look at them. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I just closed them by accident. Sorry, we may have to start again. I can't bring them back early. Let's see. So those of you who haven't gone yet, please bear with me for 1 minute. I'm really sorry about that. I closed the room by accident. So let's do that again. 1 moment. Okay. So recreate and number 3. Okay, here we go again. Sorry about that. So now you can join your room.
Is it just you and us now, Alex?
Yes, it is. Yes, everyone was in the group. So we have 6 people left in the group.
Okay, that's not a lot of people.
Yeah,
but
yes.
Yeah, but we are also running short on time, so it's okay with that respect. So they can tell us a little from their talks, and then we'll just show the next 4 petals without discussing them, just to give them an idea of the whole tool, and then there'll be a few minutes for questions in the end.
Yeah,
or perspectives.
We have hardly time for all that. Maybe we can just say that there are 4 more petals. Do they get the slides, Alex?
That's up to you. I can share them if you want them to have them.
Yeah, det vil vi.
Yes,
Sure.
Okay.
Because then we don't have to go through them. We should finish 18 minutes past 4.
With the group talks.
Yeah, with the group talks, and then we really would like to hear something.
What do you mean? The group session is over in like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Yes, about 4 minutes.
Jeg tror ikke, det der ord korrekt. Her er den 13.
No.
altså det er jo etikblomsten, der er ligesom hovedstoffet, så man kan ikke bare sige, at det giver vi dem.
Nej.
Jeg synes, vi skal prøve at nå noget mere.
Ja.
Attention to position. Hvad er det der? Nå, det er det sidste blad der. Det er jo bare det, vi skal bare præsentere dem.
Ja.
Jo. We're gonna try and say something, at least show and just comment briefly on each of the 5 petals.
Yes, maybe that would be nice to complete. It would make sense to complete that, even if it's just one sentence or two. And also feel free to, since the book is available for download, you can remind people that they can continue to explore these ideas and to learn more by downloading the book. So you can also say that.
We'll try, and maybe you could also say something about that.
Yes. Yes, I will actually put the link.
Yeah, that would be great. Because of course we talk more about it in the book and how this can be a tool for managers. Yeah, so that's the plan. And you said the thing about 5 minutes, and actually we are more flexible than we thought we were. But now we didn't say it before, and just so you know that we're not gonna shut the computer off at 25 past.
Okay. Yes, good to know.
Yeah.
Yes, and I'm noticing more and more that around 1 hour, a lot of people have to leave. I think maybe the 1 hour meetings, and then people have to move on to another meeting. So an hour and a half is a big commitment. So that's normal. Or I see that regularly too, that the group size drops after an hour.
Yeah. But I feel like we should do this again in maybe 6 months, or whenever there's an opening in the calendar of dialogues with the authors, if that's relevant, or in a year, and make it shorter, just 1 hour, and we can comprise it. Hedder det komprimere?
Comprise, yeah.
We can talk about that later.
Focus.
Yeah. And another opportunity is a forum call. Have you ever participated in a forum call?
No.
That's just for it's just for Tao's associates, but it's different associates bringing their work exactly like that. This is open to everyone, so we advertise it a certain way as a dialogue with the author. But a forum call, we also have 800 associates, so it's advertised to a lot of people, and you may have a very interesting dialogue with other associates as well.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're up for that.
Yes, that's another option.
Should we write to Dawn about that?
Yes, that would be the best way to do it, and I can mention it to her as well.
Yeah. Fine. Okay.
Okay, so I will close the room right now. So they have 1 minute to come back.
Okay. Vi hører lidt, ikke? Ja.
Jo.
Kan du styre den?
Nej, gør det.
So you have an interesting group of different backgrounds or occupations, right? In the group.
Yeah. And I don't think any of them work in the same ways.
Right. Quite diverse.
Yeah.
Lots of diverse locations too in the country. I'm surprised.
Yeah. In the world. Yeah.
Everywhere in the world. Educators. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Tilbage om få sekunder. Vi kommer tilbage om få sekunder.
Ja.
Is everybody back?
Yes, everyone is back.
Okay, great. Welcome back. It would be great if you would share some parts of your talk, some highlights from your talks. We asked you to brainstorm on how a manager, maybe it's you, maybe it's somebody else, could act with inspiration from this particular moral obligation, this part of the model. Would anybody like to share?
Well, in my case, it's I'm a quote manager, and then there's another manager above me, quote, and bring that person into the dilemma.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I got from sharing.
Yeah, and how is power a way to do that?
Well, recognizing his power.
Recognizing his power, yeah.
He's got I don't want to share the whole thing, but he's got a familial relationship to people higher up, a very close familial relationship to somebody who's very high up in the hierarchy. Yeah. And he's kind of got a moral dilemma there about how he's going to act because it affects his familial relationships. But
okay.
But sort it out as a problem that we both have.
Yeah. Okay, and then it makes sense to talk about the both of you having a moral position and creating opportunities for everybody or the right people to take part in a co-creation of something better, a better shared future. And the point about the formal power position of the managers is that they have the right to call meetings and workshops and organize work around these shared learning events. And
there's a lot of rules, but everyone breaks the rules.
Yeah. So also it would make sense to go back to those rules maybe in your case and use the formal obligations that are already supposed to be respected and returned to.
They're contradictory rules. They're contradictory rules.
Yeah, so maybe it's also an organizational learning opportunities to go over these rules and develop on them.
Yeah.
So everybody could learn something from this. Or in your case, with touching on or drawing on this part of the model. Great. Anybody else who would like to share some ideas?
In our small group, we saw the power obligation more rather than using it as in an authoritative way, but using it to create influence or, to have those collaborative relationships, more using it in an influential manner to get the co-creation going.
Yeah. And in our understanding, it is both, and they are both legitimate in organizations. They are both very important, and moral influence or psychological influence is very important in the role of the manager to use wisely and with a focus on a shared better future. And also the formal power. Sometimes it's underused, the formal position, because it could bring a lot of clarity to the expectations that everybody is being met with, but sometimes it's not clear enough what these expectations are. So both are ways of understanding the power position of managers, and very important in moral dilemmas to use this as a constructive tool and not worry about power being bad in any kind of way. There's moral power and there's formal power, and both are very important. Great, let's move on because
Can I ask a question? So have you guys looked at how is the culture of COVID affecting what you're talking about in terms of influence? You're talking about like language, collaborating using language to create a reality, a sense. What is the reality, right? But I don't know about where you are, but here in America, everything is by Zoom. It's like this, it's distant. And I think that it's a challenge for influence, and it's a challenge for even having an appreciation for creating reality, because everybody is so isolated in where they're sitting. Have you looked at how what the current situation for the last 2 years is affecting what you're saying?
Yeah, of course, we cannot not look at it because it is also part of everyday life in Denmark. Actually, it brings us to one of the other petals in the flower, discourse, because in the discourse about COVID and how it has changed the world, or bringing about new conditions for the workplaces and private life and everything, that they can also be dealt with in different ways, according to what kind of theory you are working with and inspired by. And if it's a new condition for work life, then we have to develop constructive discourses, constructive understandings of this new condition, and not talk about it being either good or bad, or just a challenge forever, or something that hinders professional life. Or if it's a condition, we have to develop constructive discourses. This is one part of the flower, with the moral obligation to pay attention to the positioning of all organizational members. And even if we meet in new settings, more online than in reality, people are still connected as contributors to the same core task. And we will just have to work out new ways of meeting, connecting, talking. And in Denmark, actually, there's been a great relief, a huge collective sigh of relief following some of the changes after COVID, because people were asking for more home office time before COVID, and the workplaces wouldn't allow it. And now it's been the reality for 2 years, and the organizations have realized that it does not on its own hinder productivity. That is more to do with how we deal with the change in conditions than the change itself. So this is also something that we work with in organizations in Denmark, dealing with the new reality or the new conditions, and developing constructive discourses about post-COVID reality for organizations. How do we still work together as a work community focused on our core task?
Of course, the COVID situation creates new challenges. When you don't meet on a daily basis, how do you invite organizational members into a dialogue? That will demand a lot of creativity, and I think that is still developing also in organizations, that we have to find new ways of including people, and also trusting them and showing respect, even though we are not physically together.
Yeah. So we'll have to wrap things up now, and we feel like we needed to talk more about these 5 petals in the flower, but unfortunately we cannot. But we will invite you to study the flower and the 5 petals more in the book. And Alex, can you give us the link again, or something useful for the further studying?
Yes, so I put several links in the chat. So the first one is a link to download the free book. And maybe you can stop sharing your screen unless there is another slide that you want to share.
No, we'll stop. Yeah.
So we see each other as we say goodbye. So there's a link to download the book. There is also a link to our dialogue with the authors page, where all of this recording will be available, and then all past recordings will also be available. And then, as I mentioned, if you're inclined to make a donation, I also put a link in the chat for you to do that. So any closing words? Maja and Gitte, thank you so much for this presentation. And did you wish to say any last few words?
Yeah, if there's more time, we would rather hear from the participants an idea or two of how to move on with a focus on relational ethics in your professional life.
It's a big question, but it would be nice to hear a few things about that.
Well, I teach I teach practical ethics in a consulting master's, and never really thought about applying it to our own work as faculty in the university.
Okay.
How fun.
Applying relational ethics in actually the work faculty do, dealing with moral dilemmas.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There might be some interesting perspectives in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, great, wonderful.
I think for me as an OD consultant, it's always foremost in my mind, particularly as I work with clients and leadership, and especially for those in organizations that have responsibility to clients, like both moral and legal responsibility to clients. And
Yes.
I also coach academic students in research. So it's also there as well, especially when we look at harm to populations that they may be studying. So it's almost foremost for me.
Yeah, great, wonderful.
And Warren, I was just curious about your integrating your work of teaching it into process consulting. That was one of the areas I studied, so I was just kind of curious about hearing some more about that. This seems to be interesting.
Yeah, it's Concordia University Masters in Human Systems Intervention.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
I did
based
it
on
as,
Edgar Schein's work.
yeah, same for me. I did it as part of my master's in change management, and it was a major part of the work that we did as well.
Great.
Yeah, nice to hear. Thank you.
It looks like it's time to say goodbye. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Maja and Gitte, for sharing your work, very valuable work, for sharing your book with the Taos Institute and the larger community. And thank you all for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this conversation and encourage you to stay in touch with each other. I'll leave the chat open for a few minutes if you want to share contact information. And we will see you maybe in some other places. So thank you.
Thank you to everybody.
Thank you. Bye.